This is Randy on session 4 of the Ninja update for 2020. I think I'm going to try to see if we have time to get through themes and the editor here. And there's a few alarming things you can do here. I want to get those out of the way pretty early on here. So the first has to do with themes. You notice that when you look at the OBS output or the same lyrics show up in the screen, but they're in a different format. This format is called a theme. And every one of these you see are 3 different themes because it's 3 different outputs. When you, for example, if I click on a one of these slides, I'll say this one, and I've clicked on it, and I want to change it. Let me just point out that this is the first time it happened. It alarmed me, so I want you to see it so it doesn't alarm me. And I think, well, let me go look around and see if there's any themes that are interesting. We have a set of things we're using. These are the ones we're trying to name them, starting with SUMC and some things that are pretty obvious. And we're going to try to clean this up so there's less of these to accidentally stumble into. But say, this one looks kind of cool. That's kind of cool. You're doing more than looking around. You're actually applying that theme to the slides that are in play. The first time I did that, it's like, man, what do I have to do to get out of this? The good news is they have the undo button. So you will do this, you will make this mistake, and you have an undo button, and thing chews on it a while to apply a theme, and you can undo the damage done. So just keep that in mind. I'll go ahead and mention too, it's kind of related to the end of the last video when I was showing you these playlists, and there's one playlist fixed. The FX means it's fixed worship playlist. That's this one right here. And you notice I didn't get into that too much on the last video, but there are some slides that just pop up that Pastor Mike wants them periodically, and you can click on them here and clear all this. And you can click on these commonly used slides. This one is very commonly used. And again, it's under fixed image giving logos. These images cannot be put in a playlist, or we hadn't figured out how to do it. So while Pastor Mike is talking about the giving and during offering and such, the camera feed is here, but this is telling people how to give at smithfieldumc.org. So that's another one that's fixed that you may not expect, but during the worship service when he calls for the slide, that's where it is. The logos are here as well. Let me show you. And one of these is labeled logo top, and the other is logo bottom. This is the one we're probably going to be using, the top one, for all the reasons I discussed in the previous video. Most often, just to keep that straight, I'll put the most commonly used one here because it keeps that real estate where it needs to be. So, anyway, that's the one thing that's alarming about themes, but you can get out of trouble if it happens. So I'm going to click on this right here, and notice that you can go to edit. This looks familiar, very similar to the editor that you've seen before. But here's something that's very cool, and I'll get into it, and it'll make sense as I go through subsequent videos. But I noticed now it's not as obvious as just wiping this. Some slides, for some reason, you can't just wipe it to get it to do what you want. But it just did in that case. But it seems like it delays before it actually highlights the text. But if I click on this tab that says text, I can change to the standard text we're using now. And you guys, we're using, currently mid-2020, we're using this Mahandra, I think it's called, CD. And here's something I really like about and you got all the obvious stuff that you'll figure out as you just take a look at it. This is like very cool. So if you take this slide and go, now that you've done one, this was something that was kind of we were all kind of fussing about in the original PowerPoints or ProPresenter 6. You can say copy text style for this slide, and then go back over here and highlight, and hit shift and highlight the rest of the slides. I don't think that's all of them. Let's go see. And then once you've highlighted all the slides, you can right click there and say paste text style. So the style of the text you just did pasted to all the slides. That's much faster than it was before this. So that's a pretty cool change. That's the only thing that's a bit confusing about the editor is there's really no save button, nothing like that. It just saves it. Again, if you make a mistake, you can use the undo button. But to get out of the edit mode, you just go back to show, and it pops right back here. So notice this is that old original font that was here. That's because I haven't clicked through it to feed the new video to see the new font. And by the way, I've still got my graphic up there. So as we saw in the last video, I can clear out the graphic, or I can clear out that separately. So just something to be aware of. So that's how the editor works. You can find your way around it and do fine with it, but One thing I do want to show you that's something to do with images, and it pops up a lot. So like right here, some people are worshiping on their phone on the stream, so we're making these fonts really big. That's why it's not as texturally rich as it used to be. It has to be simple. But sometimes if I click on this, you remember it used to be called Media Properties. It's now called Inspector. Same thing. But I've just noticed we haven't really figured out how to get the thumbnails yet where it suits you. You see how this thing is stretched and all this. But the standard configuration of this thing to work is you go to Info, and this is where you can set the thumbnail. Actually, that's for videos. I'll show you that on the video in a moment. But this is where we can give it a name if we wanted to. The Properties tab is where you actually go in, and this is where if things are not behaving correctly, I'm going to change. The top one is the one where you use scale to fit. So if I click on scale to fill, and then click, let me click over here, and then click over here. See, scale to fill is all goofed up. So let me, and notice that I left this window open. I can click this again and hit Inspector, and I can go from one to another. And now it's the same one. So let me go back to where it was. And again, stretch to fill. That gives you a different kind of problem. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, see how it's the correct one to use. Just keep going back to Inspector, and I'll show you why in just a moment. Just use the top one, scale to fit, and then you'll see that when you click it, it behaves itself and it goes where it's supposed to go. You may also see, notice it says it's configured to the scale alignment on top. A lot of times if you import a file, we've got a PowerPoint slide format that's exactly this size. You'll see it in all the templates, and you'll see that PowerPoint about. But when you save it as a JPEG, the format is usually, this is wrong, it's not the correct one, and it's usually in the center. I'll show you what that means. So if when you click and look at it, it's in the middle instead of the top. That means you want to go to the top like this. And that'll get you the configuration of what you need. So let me just verify that with you. So you can see now it's behaving itself correctly. And what I meant about the clicking inspector, like this is the active slide here that I'm working on. So if I go over here and I right click and say inspector, you don't have to close this window. You used to have to close it and reopen it. And now you can go in here and do what you would like to with it. So see there, let me show you one of the inspector as well. It's a little bit different on media. Let me show you. So let's look at welcome loops. So this is some of those welcome loops. And let me just do the same thing. You right click it, say inspector, and you'll see the, maybe it's because it's running, it's not behaving itself. Not sure why the inspector. Oh, interesting. Those must be locked out somehow. I actually have never tried that. Let me look at a different one. The motion backgrounds are ones we have to work in pretty often. Yeah, so I guess they must be somehow locked out. The welcome loops are locked or something. You can't get to them. But you get, like this is one of those motion backgrounds with the inspector. And it's the same story. We'll figure out what that is in this upcoming video. We'll get into that. What the reason it's not behaving. But the inspector usually lets you go in here, and you can set the new thumbnail and all that. That's what it's going to show you. As I mentioned earlier, it's these things. There's certain things going on that make it behave slightly differently, and I'm not sure why that inspector is doing that, but. There are circumstances where it won't, and over time we'll learn the nuances of that. So that's enough for this video. So we've covered themes and how to get in trouble and how to get out of trouble. We've learned how to edit and how to get in trouble and how to get out of trouble, and then how to get out of edit by just clicking the show and actually clicking show and then clicking a slide to see what your output looks like. And we will get to work on video 5 and have it to you soon. See you then.